All right. All right. So, thank you again for letting me come down here.
Absolutely.
Today, we will be discussing the Player's Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I just got into this, so what can you tell us about like the races and like how to select a race based on who you want to be?
So I think the biggest thing that you have to kind of consider is.
Excuse me 1 second. Oh, can I?
Yeah.
Is he turning on a laptop? Would have
He is
been,
not. Nope.
okay, thank you,
You're right.
sorry.
You're good. So the biggest thing you have to consider is taking your presence in the game and separating it from what you know about D&D outside. So when you're playing as your character, you have to kind of separate the two entities, and really trying to figure out like who do you want to be as a character. So in real life, I'm a very nice, caring person. When I play D&D, typically I'm gonna play a character that just kills everybody. Like that's what I like to do. I'm a very chaotic character typically, but then also every once in a while it's nice to just kind of change it around, play something that you're not sticking within your own bubble. So be like a bard who tries to help people that you don't typically really put yourself in. So when you're picking a character, you want to pick first off, like what do you want to do? Do you want to be magic based? Do you want to be range based? Do you want to be melee based? And then from there, you can kind of pick different classes. Like if you're melee based, do you want to be Dragonborn, who's going to have some natural tendencies with a little extra boost for their defense, just based on their base stats? Or are you going to go Barbarian, and then you can kind of go into enrage mode during battle? So, or you can just do whatever you want. That's what's the great thing about D&D is like just be creative with it. My first character was a rogue gnome who I was a gnome wizard, but I had rogue tendencies. So rogues basically are thieves.
Yeah.
So, but I'm a gnome, and so I'm just a little tiny dude running around, but I would use my magic skills to steal things, which basically it would be a lot easier to have just made him a rogue. Yeah. And it would have been a better thief, but I just was like, no, he's magic based, and he's gonna.
So you took one class, but you were able to build on it to make it into two classes almost.
Basically, yeah.
Because I know there's in the book you can do two classes, but it's very sketchy. The thing.
And it's all going to be dependent on your DM and what they really allow. The smaller groups, you can kind of get more creative and just kind of work with your DM and be like, yeah, that's fine. That still adheres to things, and your character's not going to be super OP and things like that.
So yeah. So with the classes, there are some stuff like bards and stuff. What can you tell us about like class wise? What in your opinion, what would be good classes? What are the bad classes?
There can be anything. I mean, you can have a good bard, you can have a bad bard. You can have a bard who's just like, all right, every time they're in battle and they just start playing music, it helps out the bad guys, not the good ones. Or it transforms the good people and makes them slightly more chaotic. So you literally can have any class play any alignment, which I think is something that's really cool. We've even had to before. We had a player who their character alignment was supposed to be for the team to work with the DM setup. They needed to be more of a neutral alignment, but he was definitely just like pure chaos. And anytime he could break something or kill something, he would do it. And we're like, dude, that's not your character's alignment, but he would do it anyways. So that's at that part of like separating who you want to be or deciding that ahead of time. So what we ended up doing is getting with the DM, and we made them find a basically this like coin, and he would steal stuff just from like this old man who'd try and beat up an old man and steal his money. And a couple times the old man would beat him up. But he ended up stealing this coin, and what we did is it changed his action. So every time he tried to do something bad, his character had to do something good. And they didn't know why. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know what the coin is doing. He doesn't know that it's the coin, but the DM knows it. And so That's just like another thing that you can just like add in, and it's like you never really know what your character is going to become throughout the campaign.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I hear this a lot from a lot of people who play it. What is metagaming?
So that's metagaming is when you're not separating yourself from your character knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping your two entities separate. So I may know that your character has this coin that
Mhm.
changes things.
Yeah. And I, as a
You-
person, may know.
And you may know it, but your character itself does not know that it's the coin doing it, at least at certain
Yeah.
points. Now, knowing that your character has that in its possession, metagaming would be like, oh, I don't want that anymore, and you throw away the coin.
Mhm.
Versus your character having to find out through the campaign and progress. And so that's kind of where metagame, or your DM will tell you stuff about what's going to be happening, and you make decisions ahead of time
Trying to
versus
prevent
letting,
it,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly,
Just
versus letting things kind of progress as if.
Because I know some DMs, they try to just nip that in the bud whenever they say, you're metagaming, stop it.
Yeah.
But there are some who are let it. What's the role of the DM through the character's perspective? What is it like?
So the DM has like a very rough storyline that they want to take the characters through. Typically, the ultimatum is either to beat like a boss that they have created a storyline for, or to reach godhood for your characters. So those are kind of like typically the main progressions of where the inline is. But the DM's job is really just to kind of guide the players through their decision making on that path. So they start off with a linear idea of how to get from A to B, but based on the players' decisions, they're going to deviate from that. They're going to go up, they're going to go down, and it's kind of the DM's job to kind of keep them towards the middle to finally reach that destination.
Yeah, because I know from previous experience DMing, you may want them to go one direction, you may want them to go on path A, but they find some way to deviate on path Z.
Yeah.
So I know you got to pull them back. What's based on if someone were to choose a race like human, dwarf, what would a race for someone who's just starting would you say select?
Whatever you want. It's not like in typical video games, like where you have classes that are harder or easier to play. The handbook is really good about like outlining the basics for you of what your character can and can't do,
and how
then,
they act.
And then working with your DM, they'll let you know, hey, like your character, like that's when I started out, I didn't really know what a wizard could or couldn't do. Like my knowledge of D&D wizards was completely different from what it actually was. And that's kind of how like my wizard transformed into rogue status. It would have been better for me to have just been a rogue to begin with, but I didn't even know that, which was kind of cool.
And plus you got a little bit extra benefits.
Exactly.
From that.
So I don't really think that there's like one class. Obviously, like a melee class is going to be a little bit easier because you're just going to be like
hack and slash.
Hack and slash, or you're a tank.
Yeah.
But that's also just based on my experience of fighting stuff. I think to me, playing a bard would be a harder character because I haven't done that style before. But if typically you're more of a support character in video games, then maybe that's something that might be easier for you.
All right. And most of y'all don't know one of the hardest characters, in my opinion, to play, a paladin. Why do they have the nickname Lawful Stupid?
I don't know. I really don't. I'm not super well traveled in the D&D universe to know that, but
yeah, because for all y'all who don't know out there, paladins are always doing the right thing no matter what. Only in the name for their god, but most people can't even grasp the fact of being a paladin. So that's why most people don't usually play it. Am I right?
I think paladins are tricky to play. It's also trickier for the DMs to kind of keep them on their alignment and still kind of progressing towards where they want to go. But from what I do know of playing with people who are in the campaign like that, it's all based on whatever like their cleric god alignment is. They typically, whatever their God would see fit, they do. Whether that's for the good of the party, whether it's for the bad of the party, they're separate from that.
All right. So yeah, tell us what's the deal with the whole level thing? Because you sort of, a lot of people are like, you start out first level, I know that, but what's the deal? What's with leveling? What?
So leveling will help you progress in getting stronger as characters throughout the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, like a boss is already going to have its base stats. The DMs have a monster handbook that they can reference, but they can also alter their stats as well. So you're obviously not, if you're all level 1, they're not going to throw a level 10 monster that you have to kill right off the bat.
Yeah.
It's just everybody. And there are some DMs who want you to die and keep making new characters.
And they'll just be a TPK at that point.
So it's leveling basically is like you'll fight maybe some goblins to start off, and then you save some damsel in distress or something. And then at the end of your day of campaign, your DM then rewards your characters for points or experience points for what your character's actions did. Sometimes you just get passive points. Like my gnome at one point, he used a hoverboard basically to travel around because he didn't have legs. So, but it was magic based, and we had to enter into a castle that basically had this dome around it that nullified all magic spells. So you couldn't cast any magic. So when he entered into it, his hoverboard disappeared. So now my speed was like a half an action every turn. So for me to even get to the door, everybody else had been fighting for like 10 turns. So my guy, I think at the end of it, all I was able to do was throw a rock through a window and like hit somebody, and it was kind of funny. But I still got experience points just for being around. Maybe not quite as much as people who were actually in the fight, but it's just a way to kind of level your characters, but also keep things semi-balanced. I mean, you don't want to start out super powerful, but also super.
So, going back to a previous conversation we talked about, where the players have their choices. How can the choices determine throughout the game? Can they give you good actions, bad reactions? Is it just a mixture of all between?
Can you give me like more of an example?
Like, paladin comes in, just smites the first person he sees in the room and happen to be the good person. Like, or maybe like a wizard burns down this arcane wizard's tower that he thought was evil, but it was a good person. Like, what are the outcomes?
So that's really going to be up to the DM. Obviously, like if you're supposed to meet up at like a pub and you're supposed to talk to somebody, you just know that there's an informant there that's going to give you information on something that you need. But my character wanted to steal stuff. He was kind of by himself, but he just joined this party. For all I know, this dude's like decked out in a bunch of money and is like, no, I'm going to start stealing stuff. They're not going to then tell me anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of up to the DM about that, and also like your fellow companions of the campaign to keep your character checked, just like in real life. Like if you just went up to somebody and punched them in the face, I'm gonna be like, hey man, that wasn't cool. We're trying to talk to this guy. Like it's kind of like you have to bring everybody in together. So your characters still have their own alignments, but if I'm just like a really good character and you're more of a chaotic character, we got to keep each other kind of in check. And it's just kind of the whole yin and yang of the regular universe it transitions into.
So pretty much there are good and bad consequences for every reaction you do.
Yeah. And then it's going to be up to the DM on like how, say you just walked in and stabbed the guy that you were supposed to talk to. Like, all right, how do you, if everything was based on that one moment, it's going to be on the DM to then be like, oh, well, he actually had a twin brother or something to kind of keep them.
They have to find some way to introduce the story.
Keep the story alive. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me think. Based off what we know of D&D, because I play 3.5th edition, so there used to be prestige classes. What happened with that? Like,
I'm not too familiar. I've only played 5e, just because I know there is so much with it now.
Yeah.
And everything is kind of built upon the previous editions. And some people like to just go back and play more of the classic style. It keeps the game a little bit simpler. There's even like players who have written their own handbooks on top of what 5e provides. That provides more subclasses. It provides more builds. Like somebody may have even made a wizard rogue build already.
Like a trickster rogue?
Yeah, so people have kind of already done those things, and just kind of shared it out for the rest of the D&D universe to kind of experience. So if you don't have time to sit down and make a character, but you know really what you want, I'm sure somebody else has already made something similar that you can kind of use as a guideline.
Also, because back in 3.5th edition, there used to be like zones for like wild magic. Like, say, like you were going to cast like a fireball, and all you would do is cast a ray of frost, but you were intending for a fireball. Does those zones still work like that, or is it like based on a roll now?
From what I know, it's more up to the DM and how they want that to work. Kind of like the dome area that I was in. It nullified all magic spells, so
you couldn't. Really
or it could be
magic.
something that zone. If you were to cast a spell, it only does fire damage or it only does frost damage.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of one of the DM choices of how that's going to play out. But that's again goes into like that metagame stuff.
Yeah.
Is like, do you as a person know it versus as your
so
character?
You have
actually?
to pretty much at that point just start burning through
Yeah.
spells
Like
to try to find
our characters didn't know what was happening when we you can't see. There's no visible barrier. We just knew that when we got close enough to this castle,
all magic.
I got shorter, and we're like, what just happened? And like my little disc disappeared, and then I moved back 3 feet, and then it popped up again. So we knew something was kind of going on with that, but we didn't know like, oh hey, we're about to get into battle, and you're trying to cast a firebolt that it's not going to work, and you just wasted an action.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so for wizard class and stuff, most of them usually carry around quarterstaff stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How do the staffs work?
So at the back of the player's handbook is a big list of items that you get based on which class and race you use. But you can also work with your DM, and like everything really kind of deviates and kind of pulls from your backstory. So the more elaborate your backstory is, the more little details you can use later on in the campaign to like really define who your character is. And maybe your character had like a staff that was passed. It was like an heirloom thing that your parents were wizards, your grandparents were wizards, and they kind of passed it down. And that was something that you just inherited. Or is it something that like you found along the way? And each weapon has different stats, whether it's like helpful in casting magic spells, is it more helpful bows? There's gonna be like a magic-based bow, or even like a magic-based sword. So depending on which character you are playing, if you are a wizard, if you are a wizard gnome, I don't know if you could really be a barbarian. You could be like a human, but a human's gonna have different magical stats than a gnome would. But you might be, your backstory could also help kind of incorporate those things to make it more in favor of what you're trying to accomplish.
All right. So when you're choosing like your race and your class, sometimes a race will appeal more to one class than this one race you want. Yeah. But you can still find some way to pull that one race into this. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's wraps most of it up. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Remember, y'all, if y'all are looking for anything, the 5th edition for D&D's out, and this is Player's Handbook. And if y'all are ever looking for like the game part, they all have the character sheets in the back usually.
Yeah. You can also find them online, and they're really easy to print out.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, and thank you for watching, and hope to see y'all next time. This is Mr. Tyree. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Take care.
That Yoshi's cool.
Yeah, isn't he?
Yeah.
So